as a fuel for subsequent success kind of situation where the joke is that for Bayesian, you're never really truly wrong. You're either right or not quite surprised or you're surprised in your learning. So in this case, we're going live, hopefully there are less surprises. And yeah, so we have, I discovered actually in the process of setting this up that Zoom has an end-to-end encryption feature. I'm sure that is somehow documented somewhere, but I want to see if we could actually illustrate practical capabilities of reverse engineering or a bit of skill that many have developed over the years to reverse engineer the algorithm of end-to-end encryption in Zoom as a kind of a vibe snipe of like, can I do this in one shot? So the idea is that how can we actually do it? Well, we can pray to a language model. Praying to a language model in this case involves very reproducible environments. We talked about flocks and flags. So flocks. But flocks effectively create a kind of a mixed setting, in which there's traditional and other things. And so we go towards that's sufficient. So maybe we start with worlds. And so okay, so there's some letters and numbers 0. That's interesting. Zero. So okay, so that's good enough. Starting point with the tree. Right, and so this has some weird stuff mixed in. And then there is a going to be some footage toad. And for the last video, I was saying equal to pivot code as a kind of instance SCP, which is purple, that gives you more synchronous way of getting multiple interactions, perhaps delivered in some sort of way that's not blocking. We're trying to interact more with the environments. Code. And in this case, of course, start thought about something saying this earliest because that's the first thing to get this premise. You go into that, and so when I say who is good enough, I never need anything anyway. It's just expensive. So you have to have seconds to respond this into the ability verification. So say volume toad, let's the transition from below to up here. This exists in Modality, as you can see, it's failed, but that's okay because we can actually do something in codecs as well. Just flow. So we use codecs, and if we really need to use toad, we'll use toad like this. This actually maybe I'll do that. And we can done this for sure. So it's kind of like tiling is a big part of being able to experiment. And we can zoom into it, zoom out, use the postage. I'm sure many people which I probably spawned out if you've used it at some point. But today I just want to yes, which is codecs with permissions, just like the users and just because this comes in my choice of the build this from time to time, it's an alias as well. And here I'll say confirm. So yeah, at least this list, and on this side, also products, which is the same kind of like direction control surface as the other one, except now it's using the green eyes to so if you put them out, please. You can only kind of check with capability to know whether what you're attempting to do is feasible or desirable given other things going on. So last time, the reason I had to interrupt the stream, I went the storage balloon and I wasn't resource aware, and I did lessons. Now we'll start with this as an extra stream over here. So you have like 2, and we'll also be covering this as the well, I have a little bit of time, so I want to just jump straight into some things that reverse engineering. As you can see, you can keep piling on, but we know very precise in terms of being able to create a very good, secure collaboration environment that emerges from those two that can be flexibly built. And so, for this purpose, we've designed like a curriculum for this really becoming a vibe being Arena. I think it was Arena. Suggested this that there's a learn for two associations. One of them is TH reinforcement learning, but the one I like personally is the arena of open games. So let's see how easy it is to play these properly. If I'm loading an open game skill, right, there's some games. There's something we covered in the last one. And then you can also say AC sat set of those into the precision set. And here we're going to say, okay, it starts to do something with deep wiki. Let's see if it actually succeeds. So, so we'll be interrupting the resource exhaustion of the but these are the things that we must prevent you. So here are the resources, the usual stuff. Within this, there's a lot of self-awareness that can be doing some awareness of own process ID, memory footprint, and the neighbors as well. So the idea of neighbor awareness is kind of critical in this case. So actually, when there's a reverse engineering skill, okay. And we see supervise and 3 times 3 most synergistic relevant skills following anticipated surrounding interactions based on the direction, right? So it's in some direction. You arbitrarily for minus some absence of direction plus three directions. It's like orthogonalized, you could say if you're a computer scientist, you could also say exact conditioning, like polarizing. But the idea of this, the handedness and positional aspect in logic is most accurately captured by Stelgen. So what I'm going to do is to do this like rather insane thing that just came to my head. It's completely out of the blue. I was like, you know what? Live boldly, so I'm going to formalize this in Stelgen. We go, sure, this is where Opus actually is potentially the only anthropic model that's public that will help you walls messed up by having a greater capacity for computation in this kind of thing. So we'll say Intelligent gets this code base, and then say GitHub's CLH with my stream and also .cd and then get some operating structure to understand the cadence of contributions and attempts to measure Boris and his mood, while also like a idea of the idea and roots of meta theory, what that means. We actually do very carefully in jargon. So I'm using this like jargon here because I believe I can follow it. Because the idea of this like post rigorous approach to mathematics is to take logical leaps logically. Basically, that's the best I can describe it. And so if you wanted to use linear logic and other things like that, people who are Girardians, but not the kind you find Stanford, the kind from France, we have to go back with this. And it even has recursion, which is rather unusual for this kind of like logical system is so brilliantly simple. So we have a discussion in the preceding session just earlier about how parsimony and the ability to fit into more context more easily is a kind of adaptation. Adaptation from part of syntax response to bottlenecks of various kinds. That's not particular, but it will go. So now we have 3 new STIs. A dialog fixed point, interesting. Spectre, which is the not the tile, but the library by Red Planet Labs that allows you to have like local it's much faster way of processing symbolic expressions than a nested. That's actually a great question to ask. So why Spectre is here? So why is it absolute? And so now this is an invitation to causality infamous book of why. And to add a little whimsy to this, I'll say identify 69 station ratios, illustrations, self-writing, oriented book, in cybernetic announcements of quantum mechanics, and and the fill is of the created why not synonymous. Right, and so it's kind of like a little invitation to do something whimsical. So you can see it's not exactly one prompt, but what I'm doing here is I'm starting out by like layering context, layering structure that has these like interesting recurrences and it's like causal dependencies through the nature of the semantics of how the syntax of Stelligen, which is rather esoteric, but easy to grasp once we see about constellations and things like that. So it's not a Stelligen talk at all. It's like we're supposed to work on sets. And so I will use my preceding videos, but also load 69 messages from south to IAS using uniform MCP to understand the context of what is going on. And maximally, and then we can also assign each into one exactly buckets with 23 three times, similarly informed. And this is where I'm also loading skills and I'm using MCPs. I'm ramping up my capacities, right? So I also have a tool for like wrapping this into ACP. Why would you do that is because you have like a standard way of comparing what these models are doing in a control surface that's more or less standardized, even though in reality there are many discrepancies. And so you're basically trying to nurture. So there's not IES, there's NICEs, there's IES. So there's options all of them. And there's a chat ID in case you can hack some notices without you get to those messages. These you can join. So these in particular, and let's make it 7 because we have interesting going well, messages about this event. It's the first time we're starting this stream. I'll try to do this frequently. No promises, but permitted by geographies and other things. And we'll be doing my best to update the people about the large tours. Topological ASI. Everything is topological computer. Right? So the idea of this is that there are skills put aside for many reasons that have been having to do with should skill, but you can get those skills by figuring out how to do the X command, or you can use them as a marketplace. And so there's a pure good ASI marketplace now for Claude. And ASI is kind of a misnomer, but there will be topology, and it will be better than humans at some things. General things, that's basically so that's a lot of this is collaborative intelligence around change. So including this time in rank order, here at the time, randomly sampled without replacement, based on the ability to perform rewriting and the kind leads to better mixing and random interactions with the skills and contexts of all interactions have to be basically saying also long so over slaves too. And basically, the skill concepts that are unlikely to be known outside of This is more interesting here with the geography and approach. And so what I'm going to do now is to basically create these as a way to connect. So now I'm actually going to be streaming this to my lights and I'll post the new YouTube link to those who haven't joined the Zoom. And the Zoom actually not being mindful of messaging systems at all. There are some chats. Oh God, hopefully everything's okay. Additionally, there's no screen share happening. Oh gosh, that is truly tragic. Well, thank you, Barton, for remembering. Now, thank you guys for this is entirely on you to. Actually, it's a cool idea. Could we actually construct my screens based on the interaction? That's the silver lining over there. But to your benefit, you can see earlier scroll buffer and all these interactions, but to hear about them. Hopefully this now works. light indicates that it works. Unfortunately, I can also not send a message, so I need to shoot it out real quick. We're going to reverse engineer this. Actually, let's do it real quick. Load reverse engineering skill and figure out how to that needs to be an encryption now. After 7 refinements of exit searches and matter 17 results each. Okay, so this will launch this like massive fan out of like the map. So ish of this operation, but basically extension is an operation, and there was a little bit of humor here, trying to create analysis of the activity of the main contributor or the author, I guess, I'm not sure that's the name to be now, after a while, of Stelligent. And over here, we're going to say, okay, we want to make a Stelligent environment SNCs, which to be able to construct another theory of flex. Flux is to SNCs, is flux is to X. Believe it or not, this has an email space, but fun is to try to figure out what are these things. And so, for some functions and so on. So let's start with flux. Okay, so flux is this composition environment that makes teams more productive rather than discovering alcohol again after playing with flakes for too long and like losing a thread. Really, you just get to simply full activate. You can even activate remote environments. So it's the kind of the cool idea of that is that you can actually just say something like flux. We hear this. It's almost the precise formulation every single time. Like Nix is amazing, beautiful, except when the very fundamentals of the enables it to be somewhere not in place. And so Flux is sort of early onboarding into the it's easy. It's like the installers and stuff. I don't want to go very far. At least, I want to have like something that works, and that's the essential piece of having a symbolic expression language also. And so what I'd like to say is that there is this thing called GUIX, which is a scheme. I like to say it's better than Nix because of homoiconicity and kind of you can recognize the word and have a moment of a shared understanding in the conversation, or we can like move on and spend some time with the computer. And so the idea in this case, we wanted to create a reverse engineering thing. We wanted to out of Deidre, brilliant. So the dependencies that RNA is given or anything like that, rather than messing with homebrews, sort of awful, in Ruby basically you can override anything. And, yeah, so that's flexible and terrifying at the same time. So you don't have the kind of sound foundations on which to be building beautiful systems. And so this layer is something that lip signal. That's insane. Okay, so let's say Zona signal. Nothing is spoken, but that's cool. Lip signal is cute, and let's see if we have actually more people using a kind of like of the officially old packages and things, whatever packages for weights, and or recipes, whatever it is. But it's a kind of declarative manifest of how to deal with upstream source code and manipulation artifacts and all the interesting stuff of links. So to run precisely not like language model, really much with some sort of semantics and really give the semantics being threat. So, but we need to reverse engineer. So in this case, I was saying that we don't have bash as a tool, and we actually can play by trying it at once with the bash code. Is where we write like a lot of people working with these efforts. Many contexts, my company, the language I'm working on called Gay, which we won't get into this time, but it's funny to say it's possible to think of it as having all this interaction here with video be ultimately reflected in some one big expression. The German writing, but like hypergraphicizing can untangle. You get the expression of that expression can have color, which is very simply put record a trace of where it's been, right? That's sort of like as complicated as you would make colors from that. It's like some sort of like a trace, and it's something in random books, so it's not like a label. So, okay, so what do we have? Luckily, there is something called Ring RTC, and there's a put2rs module. And so now we're looking at another constructed kind of like goggling test. So this is a one interpretation. I was like, oh yeah, you know what? Let's actually do this like other thing, and let's do this other Zoom pursuit that we were before. You might want to do conflict there, and that's where parallelism becomes important. There's a traffic rate scale, launch 3 subagents maximally, splitting again to and again, you know, sophisticated kind of structure until the meaning and the goal is as unique as the unique key, but not unique. Okay, so it means basically that you can assign a color to this sort of subagent origin, right, as a kind of a perceptual friendly thing for humans as well, because it's like unique cues of what we perceive in our eyes. And senses, it's an urban legend that there's some sources of suppose and things like magenta isn't free, but no, it's just simply a big combined sort of like magenta experience of some civilization at some point in time, and so then be able to actually associate with items, context, and be told, and so somehow magenta becomes a color. And it's kind of like it seems like esoteric, just like in this case, but if you think of color as a number, and how to be precise to talk about. Soon I want to show Aristotle, with proof of Aristotle, right? Is a great little service. Allows you to submit proofs. And so, spectrum, a lot of the things, color spaces, and so on. We talk about. I have mean files in which we've proved specific properties of it. So it means we can avoid the loop abstraction situation by having some bucket set of primitives that everything relies on, so we can make a place retrievable MCP if we have to. And then there's proof general equivalences as well, which is implemented tools and other languages like Agda or Naria or Isabel or Daphne. No, I don't think that Daphne actually is possible to do. I would be surprised, but Emacs is we're going to come back for now. We actually have a precise task. I see I've signed notice that it's actually kind of not very good. So this one is going, and I want to do some forks. And so one of those things is to bifurcate, is to either continue, do some continued fork is bifurcate, but at least you do two actions, continue and continue fork. In this case, I've given the tile, and what I can do is I can say all these dashes continue, so by C is taken well, allowing for this like continuation while the other one is still running. So in this one, we'll do say, okay, use the MCP, maybe parts, originally the title is and seed and start the collection. What is the next file? Some of the weird thing to do, but if you're trying to figure out the behaviors of certain types of longer complex what actually happens in kind of things in binary analysis, static analysis, dynamic analysis, or things like more the color role. So we need to have some way of differentiating, distinguishing trajectories. It just so happens the color seems to be in this kind of definition of color, which we will actually check out a little more but if color that comes from a very distinct sequence that was split mix 6 and 15. Good, not bad, actually. And then here we have speed notation. You can see that it's the dot. Hopefully that works. I haven't checked the messages yet, but again, this is literally the first thing I do these things. And so what we'll do is we'll switch to a different state reverse lyrics. Get to pick which one. Normally I'd have a submission here, especially a friend to stop by, and that's when I accelerate it. One of these things that you have something with breaks like this. So I see that other started having them already. We didn't have it before. Nice. things. And so what the point I was making earlier is that rather than setting up from scratch from some abstract sort of like a beginner tutorial scenario, you can have a concrete objective that's not like out of the realm of the possible in physics. You can actually have technical objectives. Whereas this next industry program use adds and here I'll basically say read and say so this is cool. Regard to integration, sort of precise working integration. Check Claude and CP list. That's like list, and let's we got Claude and CP, and if not, possibly a number of things like Lewis. So this is very different. Language to kind of language historian format of storing this history is not history JSON. For the fact, L stands for line. So these are interactions we have. I believe you have in the tree, let's call it that. Other thing there. And what we have here is a very precise use of so good judgment. So two tokens and see if they're still consistent and less than. And so if you didn't know what you're doing, that's okay. Because what you can do is you could load a float still. And so having a kind of enactment of what the finished state looks like helps you consider try on different types of interaction, the sequences and patterns. And my phone is ringing, and so that means I'm going to be disconnecting very soon. But I'm going to launch this, and I'm going to maintain like a thread. And we'll eventually come back, and we're going to review the results. But the idea is that we are doing fairly well here. The MCP connection is being fixed, so that's good. So it's actually being like adjusted. So how would you fix the MCP if you didn't know? Well, you'd first have to find out, and then you'd be able to do it. In this case, you don't have to find out, you just say, okay, sure. Self-built trajectory helps your systems. Have to focus on what's truly important. And so I've added this intriguing case, so that you didn't do it by manually typing and opening a custom, but have something that works, if it works, well, you will get accept for pedagogic reasons. So if you go to AS, which they just to do now. There's some dangerous like that. So there's another video which talks about it. And in this case, what we expect is that there's an R2 perfect. Now we say, okay, use programs to the system. What we can do to meet the goals to knock out what assume is milestone B, as a grade C, palettes, trying to see the species shown to be not. Do you want more branding and what, including this canonical? So it's easy to find different for yourself, but it's approaching every single agent you have. If you have three of them, they always are the same colony certification. If that doesn't happen, there's some stability in the presentation issue or something. In first attempt, of course, it runs with the row. You could say finding the strings for these 16 messages for so long. If you notice, the focus is going to be perfect. Yeah, so that actually still pretty much in this like organism in a self-regulated way. Reverse national is not really self-regulated, but we also had a different project in which we did this having this level of convenience with like packages and baking and not having to do like volunteer and mix things. And so we'll still create the kind of idea that's we want to be able to understand every step of the way the precise reason we're doing something and how it connects. And if we miss one of those chains and lose links, you lose the plot basically. But that's what hallucination is about. nearly good enough to sort of for the utility space to kind of download this effective computation, or even flexible, as long as you keep these end-to-end connection correct. In this case, here's cloud code. I may have to jump very soon. Sort of good enough. Yes, so let's go up here. And so, in this case, they can go to AWS, and so let's activate, and you'll get a kind of a three-part space separated kind of environment composition where packages are combined, and so you can see all the packages from all these environments here flops list. And so they have some interesting things. And so people tell you need to do MCP and so on. Honestly, CLI is pretty great, and so is an API. What you can do is you can literally try to load these skills. And so you can go into all these, which is plug. Hyper is going to the initial reverse expectations as external purpose and process as context, and say attack and interpret. What I think that unfortunately works is to be a special but then you can say random walk, at least sense that the CP tools that can help us understand the quarks, basically showing instances of all these packages, agents. And so what we have here is the ability to say, okay, what can we do with this package? So this gives you kind of an interface, an actual interface over these. One of those interfaces that I really like to use these days, so is just, oh, there goes, looks like that was a mixed language stack. Okay, so it's actually not that far from mix. Storage environment, all that. I actually would like to find like my favorite objects in these type of systems, because since they're starting in some sort of monetically considered way, we can go ahead and maybe actually benefit from that a little bit. So something else. Yeah, there's my package. Box is great. Basically, find this repair thing, failing, whatever, forward it anyway. And I say six. Yeah, and docs were good at there's this out this many videos ago. I was preparing to make this actually says. And there is basically an object in Julia is a set, which finally can be more than just some sort of high field sort of like abstraction with nervous system on the data, and literally start applying it immediately to understand what's different about this environment and how to basically benefit from it, increase let's say. So the recursive attribute says, which says effectively has multiple phases of scoping, and so you can actually understand more or less precisely what a certain like the importance depends placed into this attribute set. You don't have to go all the way there. You can start with something much simpler, which is well, honestly, I feel like the voice of it doesn't really work. So I'd like to find examples in the posters where we post components. Oh, there we go. Some graphical structure. Perfect. This is usually a very efficient way of exploring information. So, let's get all this, right? So basically, I want to create a maximally comprehensive scale as a starting point, and if I have that, and somehow we get to reverse engineering, but eventually, so next time I start this, I'll be more painful. I've done a little bit of improvement in my process, and as you can see in my previous video, the struggle is real, but gradually struggling in more and more nuanced ways that help us achieve some outcomes in rather quick ways without necessarily all those kind of competencies, except in the sort of aspect of verifying competency and the sufficiency of things, or if it's really in the position of great need, just blindly trusting the skills. So I say blindly trusting the skills while taking logical leaps, logical vigilance. So ability to have like the external tool and the ability to interact with it literally requires this notion of iteration. where time comes from systems is very good to ponder sometimes, but I'm going to say two now. That's going to be it for now because unfortunately my time is currently concluding for the window and I set aside for this, but I would say in a very real way, we have explored kind of the essentials of the flow here, right? Because what we have now is a system that has many different areas of impact. And these like behaviors we're observing. In this case, how to use these like predictable distinct sequences from Pepper's way. Let's basically color each of these in a predictable way, ensuring that if you have entropy received from a distance direction, that the XOR relationship is there by construction somehow. And then there are other things you can try to induce, like conservation laws, also coming from these like interactions that arise in the course of interacting with these models. And so to return to the notions that there is kind of a widget system continue faster and you say, oh, nice, there's header, okay, so there is use that I see well, then skills, trailer with skills, which is essentially out there's a book called Black Hat Go. In fact, there is simply took all the chapters and I had some new chapters to be added by the system. And as the name says, it's not exactly a clean move, but it definitely works in a sense. So here we have 8 tasks to create successfully, right? So we have this tool encoding. And so what I can do now is this idea of continuous improvement, shrinking how frequently the timescale, if it happens, only being generally more configured in terms of timescales combined in the web. And I can say, okay, if we were to load and self-improved agent skill, say, logical embedding is the linear functions as interfaces between the agencies. I'm not quite what I'm saying it, but we'll get there. The self-evolving agent needs to figure out from this context as well as recent context like to be of Claude, history JSON, codex, history JSON. Relevant to the themes of this interaction, and eventually with messages to be sent to to yes and yes for the preceding messages each to leave involved. So now it's actually a precise thing with a program that I can imagine how it's a transformation over this like data that includes a lot of interactions, so many, in fact, it's too much for context here, but now we have to see the interaction themes, and we'll basically see, okay, we'll do big things, so we'll see all interactions with our two SFies historically to faster than reasonable conversions. We want just binary, CDAO, it's self-interesting structures or structures that are some stuff. You want to have dynamics efficiency skill. So now if we playing mind speed of whatever sentiment is, if you express it in your own language, that doesn't necessarily have to make sense to anyone but a person making observation. So the way is, in a sense, you as a wielder of these systems get to be a kind of kind of arbitrary pressure to actually just to stick around, and if you get to steer the systems and no less flowing, these are directions of external systems. Type deep is fantastic, and now we'll have a much more precise contextual understanding. But of course, this is still not parallel enough, right? So there are many different individual things, but you want to run them in parallel. So here I'll say, okay, you which 7 skills going to have this better outside the obvious. It's not the obviousness as well as the very situation of the obviousness to do a variety of this. Don't and data assisted control, but in this sort of aspect of mechanistic capability of apologies, so we're really like something or other, and we're leading the way, start the end now. Yeah, basically this sort of outcomes, right? So this notion of why you see what you see is not always clear, right? So there's some amount of reducing the stuff that we really can, maybe, hopefully, if it makes sense, look at later. But the idea is always interactions that you need to refine this, to fix this, to fix that. It's not like one shot away. Oh, nice. We're starting to look at the binary of Zoom. So you can see the imports, which are pretty standard Swift stuff. And we have sessions, okay, blah. Okay, another time to this is the last, this is the last instruction. This is the last interaction we have resources for it from time. Proceed to maximally and as many iterations and in any parallel XOR distinguishable ways to be in maximum connection to actually proceed. Precisely formulated benchmark conceptualizable view into how we want to actually works related to frameworks. So this is kind of like what we've been building for. Now, of course, the goal is to, even this, right, is a lot of interactions. I think that this was about to show that we have. Perhaps it was interesting to use DeepWiki as well to see if there's anything in open source that is being used to discover any much like similarities, signature, and intermediate representation, and we'll find it. So now I think actually pretty confident about the obfuscation around this being negligible for the same reason we like to have open algorithms. But if I'm pretty sure this has been actually written about it, how it has been written about. So I hope actual people making this kind of like area, we can ICR and other things like that. So yeah, here we go. This is kind of what the result of this lab step will be the post of this analysis. But what we saw is that I judiciously, increasingly so with choices of this definition, chosen tools and chosen competencies contextually, and it's entirely possible to see this as post-rigorous, which is not arbitrary, but post-rigorous view into kind of like a distillation of behavior types. Right? So this is how to distill behavior types on the behavior. There's the notion of seeing these evolving structures and many different sort of formal representations, in aligned ways. So I think the rest of it will be simple footnotes. Simply between the six, if you're worried, and there is a bundle, and then within the bundle there is a indication that the randomness used for each of these is different, and so by the distinct sequences rule, we continue doing this completing parallel, somehow dividing the search space, and we're basically doing so how is this since yes, course, number of things, formal, so the idea that this definition I think temperature and all of this like control of basically the alerts can be achieved even if there is levels that have absolutely clue, at least now when they would happen without relying on like low clock time. So like color and length time and musical clocks and other versions before and then the tools without any consideration to capability. Similar guarantees, but in this clear indication of the desired status. Yeah, so the idea is this environment software. It's possible to create experiences, build sort of just-in-time features and achieve outcomes in these systems to the meaning, like information, listening, space, and it's screen share, screen, and video predictive path and phonetic language construction, color, modes, these sense of Y6 and it's here. So this is kind of like a cliffhanger for next time. But like if you combine the pieces of these videos, next time it basically starts from like reconstruction and listening. So like in memento way, just say, okay, what are we up to? Right. And so how to continue next time with most optimal reconstruction of this context and this particular extending mass in Lab a lot of objects. Is the final prototype now. So technically I failed the vibe snipe, but I have done it eventually, right? No interactions clearly. And so what we have is this example of it, kind of like a different way of thinking about what the system is for. And once it knows symbolic language, it's not just actually computing, it becomes like this like last resort, ideally some sort of languages. So as well. So always the little interfaces for generations next time. And so you have cognitive continuity, will have to kind of illustration of how to actually continue. But the short, unfortunately, but could go for running and more to come tomorrow.